Mordecai's Pride by Ginzberg. When Ahasuerus raised Haman to his high office, he at the same time issued the order that all who saw him were to prostrate themselves before him and pay him divine honors. To make it manifest that the homage due to him had an idolatrous character, Haman had the image of an idol fastened to his clothes, so that whoever bowed down before him worshipped an idol at the same time. 100 Mordecai alone of all at court refused to obey the royal order. The highest officials, even the most exalted judges, showed Haman the reverence bidden by the king. The Jews themselves entreated Mordecai not to call forth the fury of Haman, and caused the ruin of Israel thereby. Mordecai, however, remained steadfast. No persuasions could move him to pay to a mortal the tribute due to divinity. 101. Also the servants of the king who sat at the gate of the royal palace said to Mordecai, "Wherein art thou better than we, that we should pay reverence to Haman and prostrate ourselves? And thou doest not of all commanded us in the matter." Mordecai answered, saying, "O ye fools without understanding, hear ye my words and make meet reply thereunto. Who is man that he should act proudly and arrogantly, man born of woman and few in days? At his birth there is weeping and travailing, in his youth pain and groans, all his days are full of trouble, and in the end he returns unto dust. Before such an one I should prostrate myself. I bend the knee before God alone, the only living one in heaven, he who is the fire consuming all other fires, who holds the earth in his arms, who stretches out the heavens in his might, who darkens the sun when it pleases him and illumines the darkness, who commanded the sand to set bounds unto the seas, who made the waters of the sea salt and caused its waves to spread an aroma as of wine, who chained the sea as with manacles and held it fast in the depths of the abyss that it might not overflow the land. It rages, yet it cannot pass its limits. With his word he created the firmament, which he stretched out like a cloud in the air. He cast it over the world like a dark vault, like a tent it is spread over the earth. In his strength he upholds all there is above and below. The sun, the moon, and the Pleiades run before him. The stars and the planets are not idle for a single moment. They rest not, they speed before him as his messengers, going to the right and to the left, to do the will of him who created them. To him praise is due, before him we must prostrate ourselves. The court officials spake and said, "Yet we know well that thy ancestor Jacob prostrated himself before Haman's ancestor Esau." Whereunto Mordecai made reply, "I am a descendant of Benjamin, who was not yet born when his father Jacob and his brothers cast themselves upon the earth before Esau. My ancestor never showed such honor to a mortal. Therefore was Benjamin's allotment of land in Palestine privileged to contain the temple, the spot whereon Israel and all the peoples of the earth prostrated themselves before God belonged to him who had never prostrated himself before mortal man. Therefore I will not bend my knee before this sinner Haman, nor cast myself to earth before him." 102. Haman at first tried to propitiate Mordecai by a show of modesty. As though he had not noticed the behavior of Mordecai, he approached him and saluted him with the words, "Peace be with thee, my lord." But Mordecai bluntly replied, "There is no peace, saith my God, to the wicked." 103. The hatred of Mordecai cherished by Haman was due to more than the hereditary enmity between the descendants of Saul and Agag. 104. Not even Mordecai's public refusal to pay the homage due to Haman suffices to explain its virulence. Mordecai was aware of a certain incident in the past of Haman. If he had divulged it, the betrayal would have been most painful to the latter. This accounts for the intensity of his feeling. It once happened that a city in India rebelled against Ahasuerus. In great haste troops were dispatched thither under the command of Mordecai and Haman. It was estimated that the campaign would require 3 years, and all preparations were made accordingly. By the end of the first year Haman had squandered the provisions laid in to supply the part of the army commanded by him for the whole term of the campaign. Greatly embarrassed, he requested Mordecai to give him aid. Mordecai, however, refused him succor. They both had been granted the same amount of provisions for an equal number of men. Haman then offered to borrow from Mordecai and pay him interest. This, too, Mordecai refused to do, and for 2 reasons. If Mordecai had supplied Haman's men with provisions, his own would have to suffer. And as for interest, the law prohibits it, saying, "Unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury." And Jacob and Esau, the respective ancestors of Mordecai and Haman, had been brothers. When starvation stared them in the face, the troops commanded by Haman threatened him with death unless he gave them their rations. Haman again resorted to Mordecai and promised to pay him as much as 10% interest. The Jewish general continued to refuse the offer, but he professed himself willing to help him out of his embarrassment on one condition, that Haman sell himself to Mordecai as his slave. Driven into a corner, he acquiesced, and the contract was written upon Mordecai's kneecap, because there was no paper to be found in the camp. The bill of sale ran thus: I, Haman, the son of Hammedatha of the family of Agag, was sent out by King Ahasuerus to make war upon an Indian city, with an army of 60,000 soldiers, furnished with the necessary provisions. Precisely the same commission was given by the king to Mordecai, the son of Shimei of the tribe of Benjamin. But I squandered the provisions entrusted to me by the king, so that I had no rations to give to my troops. I desired to borrow from Mordecai on interest, but having regard to the fact that Jacob and Esau were brothers, he refused to lend me upon usury, and I was forced to sell myself as slave to him. If now I should at any time decline to serve him as a slave, or deny that I am his slave, or if my children and children's children unto the end of all time should refuse to do him service, if only a single day of the week, or if I should act inimically toward him on account of this contract, as Esau did toward Jacob after selling him his birthright, in all these cases a beam of wood is to be plucked out of the house of the recalcitrant, and he is to be hanged upon it. I, Haman, the son of Hammedatha of the family of Agag, being under no restraint, do hereby consent with my own will, and bind myself to be slave in perpetuity to Mordecai, in accordance with the contents of this document. Later, when Haman attained to high rank in the state, Mordecai, whenever he met him, was in the habit of stretching out his knee toward him, so that he might see the bill of sale. This so enraged him against Mordecai and against the Jews that he resolved to extirpate the Jewish people. 105.